Hello, welcome back to my channel. Thank you again for being here and watching this video. This one is going to be a bit long, or I think I will stitch it in several videos, because what I want to talk to you about today is the Leica Sl2, and I want to make a kind of analyze and really objective review of the Sl2, mainly in terms of ergonomy, user-friendly interface, the button layout, what you can do, what you cannot do with this camera, and just to give you not just an overview, but a precise and realistic view of what you can do with the Sl2, and mainly what you cannot do with it. You don't really see any honest thoughts about the Sl2. You never see negative things about this camera. Nobody will tell you what you don't want to hear, because when you are thinking about buying a Sl2, you are thinking about throwing away 6,000 euros, even more. So you are not prepared, honestly, to listen to bad things about the Sl2. You are not prepared to listening to people who complain about the Sl2. You are not prepared to admit that the Sl2 is not the best camera ever, because you are ready to pay 6,000 euros for this camera, and what you want to hear, and you just want to be convinced and reassured, and you just want to hear what you want to hear, is that this is a very good camera. So let me tell you the real story. Let's go. The Sl2 is a L-mount camera, so you know it's all started with the Leica T, the first ever L-mount camera, and at this moment it was the T-mount, because nobody knew that it would become the L-mount aliens and so on and so forth. So the first one was the Leica T, a wonderful piece of camera, and this is, yes, I agree, this is a very wonderful camera from Leica, and it has a unique sense of creativity and photography and so on. So what is an L-mount camera? It's a hybrid system on which you can either put the TL mount lenses, so the APS-C crop sensor lenses that go on the T. You can mount them on the TL2, Sl2, S1, S1R, SL, and so on. So it's hybrid system. That means that it's really friendly. You can put whatever you want. You can also put any M lenses on them, like a small M lenses, using an adapter, the M to L adapter, and you can mount the lens on your body. That's the power also of the L-mount aliens. What you can do also for sure is mount any kind of lenses. Here I have an example. You can take a Metabons lens adapter, and on this you can mount a Nikon lens, and so you can still continue to play with your former Nikon lenses and mount them on the L-mount cameras. You can do the same with the Canon and so on and so forth. And of course, what you have, and the reason why I switched to the L-mount, was the SL lenses. The SL lenses are very well built, very well designed, and the quality that you can get out of these lenses are at a very high level that I never saw before. But I saw something better recently, which is the GFX system with the GF lenses and this kind of medium format that is a bit bigger than the full frame. I tested out the GFX 100S with the 110 millimeters, and the respect of the colors and the quality behind the system is far better than what you can have on the L-mount aliens. So what I want to do right now is show you the difference that you have between the Lumix S1R and the Leica Sl2. These two bodies shares the same sensor. It's a full frame 47 megapixels sensor. But it's the only thing that they share, the sensor and the L mount, of course. But for the rest, all the button layouts, the customization, and whatever you can think of is completely different. I have to say that it's amazing how they were able, both of them, to make such different cameras starting from the same sensor and the same mount. And I will explain you that, and you will decide which one you prefer, what is made for you or not. I don't pretend that I'm going to tell you who these cameras are made for, who they are not made for, and no. Honestly, I will just tell you what they can do, what are the limitations that I found, mainly on the SL2, and then you do what you want with this information. So let's go. So first thing, of course, it's about the design, and you will agree that those two cameras are completely different, and one has very few buttons, the Leica, and it's very pure design with straight lines. Nothing to say much more about it. It's very, very nice when you take it out of the box and you take it in your hand. You feel, wow, this is a very, very nice object. I don't say camera, but object. It's very well designed. I have to admit this point, the SL2 is a joy to hold in your hand. It's a kind of high quality piece of design, contemporary design. The Lumix S1R is showing much more buttons everywhere. Is more similar to what you can see with the former DSLR, and in this regard you will not be a lot disappointed when you take this in your hand. It's like if you had a full frame DSLR Pro model. I don't speak about small full frame DSLR, but a real like a big Nikon D850 or and so on. And of course, if you put the grip on the S1R, at the end you have something that is as big as let's say a D5 or the big Canon. I don't remember the names exactly, but okay, you have a big camera, and of course you can put the grip on the Leica also and have a big one, but the button layout is so different. Another difference that is one of the main difference is that the S1R has a tilt screen like this, and if you are doing portrait session you can be like this. If you are doing landscape you can orientate the screen in this direction, or if you are doing a picture like that with the hands above, you can switch the screen like this also. And this simple feature, you cannot do it with the Leica Sl2. Forget. If you are looking for a camera with tilt screen, okay, forget, go away, and don't take the Sl2. None of the Leica SL has this tilt screen. None of them in the full range of camera in the Leica, they don't have tilt screen. I don't know why. When you see what, I think, yes, it's Fujifilm X100V, what they reach, the quality they have in the screen, that it's flush. It's not proeminent, it's flush in the design of the body, but it is a tilting screen, and they made it, and it's very nice. And I don't understand why Leica doesn't want to go in this direction, because honestly, it's something that can miss a lot. So, tilt screen on the Lumix. So let's start with the positive things. So if you are on the way to buy a SL2, you will be happy. You can stop the video after that and don't go forward with the negative things. Okay, the positive is, yes, the design, absolutely gorgeous, very pleasing to hold it in the hand. it's difficult to describe it, but it's very well built, and you have a joy. It's pleasing to have it in the end. This dial here is very pleasing also. The back one, you can press it and rotate it. I mean, the design is, the ergonomy in the hand is okay. I like it. Second thing is the EVF, electronic viewfinder. It's the first time ever that I find it with an electronic viewfinder or any viewfinder, is that I don't have to change the diopter tuning of the viewfinder. It's adapted to my view even though I have glasses. I mean, when I keep my glasses on my eyes and I look in the viewfinder, it's perfect. Otherwise, in any other camera, I have to tune it and change it a little bit. I don't understand what's behind this in terms of optical performances, but honestly, the viewfinder is better than the S1R with disregard of the dioptric tuning. Another thing is about the menu. The menu are very clean, and I mean, you can switch from photo to video very simply. You have seen it in lots of review. And the design of the menu, the font that we are using for the word, the pictograms, I mean, it's really pleasing to navigate into the menu. It's a very short menu. You don't have a lot of features inside. You may miss a lot of feature, but the menu is pleasing to use, and for that I have to say Leica also does a great job regarding the menu and the interface. And what do we have else? I think there is a last one, and I'm just thinking about it. Yes, another thing regarding the continuous and tracking mode. With the Sl2, you have the possibility to decide either the tracking is starting always at the same place, or it starts at the place it started the time before, or it starts at the place it ended the time before for the previous picture you took. And this is very interesting if you are on a track with racing cars and you want to track the cars from the left to the right, for me. So each time you will take a picture and come back to the tracking mode, the tracking point will go back to the left part if you select that you want the tracking to start where it started the time before. Or if you are photographing something that is moving, it goes out and goes in and goes out, then you can also select that you want the tracking to start where it ended the picture before. So in this case, the subject goes out, clack, the tracking keeps here. Then the subject goes in, clack, you track it up, and then it goes away, and then it goes in and up. So this is very clever. Or you can also select that you want the tracking to always start at the center of the frame. That's clever, and again, 1 point for the Sl2. I'm not counting the points, but at least. So now, guys, if you want to buy a Sl2, go on and don't watch the end of the video, because what I told was just this part, and now all these are negative points about the Sl2. So let's go right now about the joystick. With the Lumix, the joystick is 8 direction, up, down, and diagonal direction. With the Leica, it's completely stupid. The joystick does not have diagonal direction. You would say, I don't care, I can use the back screen. So yes, when you are holding the camera like this, you can use the back screen to select where you want the focus point to be, and that's easy. But when you have the eyes in the viewfinder, you want to be able to move the point in diagonal. It's much faster than moving it in one direction and another one direction. It's simply because if you are moving from there to there, this is the shortest way, and this is far longer. So that's the limitation of the joystick. Then you would tell me, Well, when you have the eyes into the viewfinder, you can use the back screen to move the point, the focusing point. Yes, you're right. But here you have another limitation in the SL2 that you don't have in the S1 and S1R. In the S1R, you can tell the camera that you want to use only one part of the screen to make this movement, and also that the movement that you are doing are limited to how do we say that? Let me think and find the word and I come back. Oh yeah, I have it. In the Lumix, you can select ever you want the movement that you apply with the finger on the screen when you have the eye in the viewfinder to be relative or absolute. Absolute, that means that if you have the eye in the viewfinder and that you click the screen at somewhere, that means that effectively you want the point to be somewhere here. And relative, that means that if you still, when you have the eye in the viewfinder, when you move the finger on the screen, you are defining your movement that you want to apply to this focus point relatively to its actual position. That means that if the focus point is somewhere here, but when you put the eye in the viewfinder, you just do something like this with your finger, it will move the focus from the position it is up like you did here. So you are with the viewfinder, with the thumbs here, and you can move slightly your focusing point. When you have the eyes here, you can very slightly, precisely move your focus point. With the SL2, forget, it's absolute movement. You cannot decide to use a part of the screen. So when you are using the viewfinder, the EVF, and you want to change the position of the focusing point with the finger, you need to click on the screen exactly where you want it to be. So if it's on the left, you will have your thumbs in the eyes because you will not be able to go there. And you cannot tell him, just move slightly on the left, a little bit like this. No, you can't. If you do this, and the point was there, the point comes here. But you cannot tell him from there to go slightly below, just touching the screen like this. You cannot do that. So yes, the fact that the joystick is only 4 directions and the touch screen, when you have the eye in the viewfinder, is limited to absolute modification, you lose time when you want to select another point in the viewfinder. You are obliged to take the camera out of your eye and select precisely on the screen if you want to go fast. Or if you have the eye in the viewfinder, you need to use the joysticks and go there and there instead of choosing the shortest way. One other limitation that I found is about the back buttons here. They are all on the left. That means that when you are using a big lens, you need to grab your camera with the right hand and hold the camera with the right hand when you come to and touch the back button. When you want to go into the menu and so on, you need to leave the left hand that hold the lens and play with the button. And what does it mean? Mainly when you have big lenses like the 90-280 or 70-200 or even the 24-90, which is heavy, it leads to the fact that you make the camera go like this, you touch the screen and then you hold it again, because it might be quite heavy for only your right hand to hold the camera like this all day long each time you want to change some things. So to me, it's a limitation, because with the menu button, you can have access to all the settings with the touch screen. You can change them very easily. So this is powerful, but to do that, you need to hold the camera with the right hand. And they did it because they duplicated the back layout of the Leica M10. They duplicated it on the Leica SL2, and to me, it doesn't work. It's okay for an M10 with a very small lens like M whatever, because there are small lenses. So if you have a small lens like this on your camera, it's easy to hold the camera with the right hand and touch the menu. So for that, it works on a M10, but on the SL2, I don't. I find it as a limitation. You think what you want, but this is my honest thought about this layout with all the buttons on the left. Compared to that, with the Lumix or lots of other cameras, you have everything here with your thumbs. That means that you can still hold the lens, the heavy lens here, and when you have the eye here, you can activate the Q menu, you can activate the menu, you can activate a lot of features and buttons that are on the right side of the back of the camera without losing the lens here and being obliged to come and with the left hand touch the screen or the buttons that could be on the left. So that's very clever on the Lumix S1, S1R, and S5 also cameras. Okay, a new limitation is regarding what you can display at the back of the screen when you are taking pictures. With the Lumix, you can apply what I did, and you can see it in a previous video that I made. You can ask the 4 direction of the back wheel here. There are 4 buttons, and for instance, what I did is that I asked that one button is showing me the horizon, another button is showing me the histogram, yes or no, another button is showing me the grid also, of course, yes, and the button is showing me yes or no the peaking. It doesn't work like this with the Leica Sl2, and they have a strange way, their own way to do that. And it's called blah blah blah. Let me. It's in French, so I will not be able. But in fact, when you press the button, the FN button, for instance, you will switch from one mode to another one. You can apply it to 4 modes of display. And this mode, you define in the menu what you want to show and hide in each mode. So that means that you switch from one to another, and each time you switch one to another, there is a selection of 6 displays that will be visible or not. But it's not that easy to say, I just don't want the peaking. You switch the button on off for the peaking, and the peaking appears or disappears. Here, if you don't want the peaking but still want the horizon and the grid, you have to have one of the 4 modes that has this configuration: the grid, the horizon, not the peaking, but you have also the fact that it displays or not the information on top and bottom of the screen. All these displays information are in the modes that you select, and you cannot simply ask to have horizon yes or no, peaking yes or no, grid yes or no. You have to switch from one mode to another, and you have to think about these modes in order to have what you want, depending on the number of press of the FN button you are doing. But doing so, it requires to use the FN button. So this FN button, if you use it to change the display at the back of the screen or in the viewfinder, it's the same. When you press it, it means that you are not applying another function to the FN button. It's one limitation, and this kind of selecting the peaking yes or no is not easy at all. Okay, we continue with always the interface. With the Lumix, you have into the menu the possibility to have your customized menu, in which you put all the features that you want, that you need the most frequently. And when you press menu here, it automatically switch to this customized menu, and you have a free page in which you can have each time, I think it's 7, so it's more than 20 functions that you can put in your custom menu, and you can put this function at the place you want in this custom menu, and that's very important because in the SL2 you also add this custom menu that appears if you start to add some features in your custom menu. Then the second time you press the menu, you will enter in your favorite custom functions, and it is 2 pages with 12 functions that you can select, only 12, and you cannot select the order of appearance of this function that you have selected. So it's a custom menu, but you cannot custom like you want, and it's only 12 functions. It's okay, it works, but you cannot put them at the place you want in this menu. In the Lumix, you have this lock lever here that allows you to lock the camera, but it will lock what you want it to lock. And you have 5 or 6 things you can lock. You go into the menu and define what you want to lock when you select it. So it's an easy way to lock only the screen, for instance, but not the rest. Or lock the button and not the screen, but you define it and you switch lock on off like this. Very easy, simple. With the Leica, you need first to go into, you press once menu, you press then the lock logo, and then you select yes or no to lock this. But it will lock not as simply the screen as it is with the Lumix, because it will not lock the screen, in fact, because you still can click on menu unlock, so it's not locking the screen. So when you have your eye into the viewfinder and you may touch the screen with your nose or with here this part of your face, the screen is not easily locked compared to the Lumix. If you grab the camera to your eyes, you can switch lock. So you know that then the screen is locked if you want it to be locked. Okay, let's talk about one as important feature as the tilted screen. And I think it's even more important to me. With the Lumix, what I did is that with this button, I have selected the metering mode function, so I can select if I am in a multi-metering, if I am in a center weighted metering mode, or spot metering, or highlight weighted metering mode. And I have applied the same feature to the button here on the Lumix SL2. So when I press this button, it will show me this 3 possibility, and I can easily switch to one and another. But let's say, and I think you know it if you come from the DSLR world, if you have a Nikon, for instance, with a Nikon you can ask that one of the front button here is meant to apply a unique spot metering for this picture only. So that means that you can be in a center weight or in a, let's say, a multi-metering mode, and without going here and changing the metering mode, you keep it on what it is, and pressing this button, it will switch immediately to spot metering for this photo, and then you release the button and it goes back to the metering mode that it was. On the SL2, there is no way to ask him to switch to spot metering. You cannot, except if you open the metering mode and select spot. But once it is done, if you want to come back to a global metering mode, you need to press again the button and come back to it. So there is no way to have a shortcut button to press it and apply spot metering. That's a limitation very important to me, because I'm used to that. When you have your eye in the viewfinder with a DSLR, And it's very easy. You see that the speed is, or you see what the light measuring is, and you can easily press spot measure. And then if you have a subject that is in a very contrasty scene, you can make your spot measure on the subject to be sure that the exposure on the subject will be correct. And you don't care about the background. For instance, if you are on the mountain with the snow behind, you can do that with just spot metering on the face of your subject, and the good exposure is done. One very powerful thing that you can do with the Lumix S1 is that more than that, you can spot measure somewhere else than the place where the subject is. I made a video just for that. That is very powerful. So don't even think about it in the SL2, as it isn't able to make a spot measure in a simple way. So don't think about measuring the light somewhere else than where you take the picture. So don't try to do that. As important as the spot metering is the depth of field preview. When you are using the SL lenses, you select the aperture with the back wheel because you don't have aperture ring on the lens. In the contrary, as an M lens, on an M lens, or you can also use a Nikon lens, you can easily change the aperture, and you have with the M lens you see immediately the result in the viewfinder or on the back screen because the aperture is physically closed. But with those electronic lenses, when you select to close your aperture and starting from 2 you ask to be at 5.6 or 8 f8, you don't see immediately the result and the depth of field preview because it's not done on the lens until you take the picture. It's when you take the picture that it will close the diaphragm to f8 and open it again afterwards. And you don't have a shortcut. It doesn't exist into the SL2. You cannot press a button to preview the depth of field. I mean, it's a professional camera, no spot metering, no preview of depth of field, and so on and so forth. Well, I find again another limitation when you want to preview what is your depth of field. It can be very useful just to press a button like on a DSLR and see the diaphragm that is closing to f8, for instance. So the Lumix, of course, can do that, and not the SL2. Also, what you can do with the Lumix is, and I made a video for that, is that you can easily select, when you are in auto ISO, the minimum speed, the minimum shutter speed. So that means that you are not obliged to switch from one profile to another one, because you can pre-save into user profile. For instance, you make street photography and you want f8 and 1 on 250 seconds shutter speed, but then you have another profile for portrait where you want to limit the ISO, you want this kind of shutter speed that is linked to your flash, and then you have a preset for sport or for car racing, and for animal shooting where your minimum shutter speed is 1 on 1000 or 2000 of the seconds, and then you switch from one preset to another one. But the fact to switch to presets like this is also you switch all the other features, and maybe you can have saved to this preset the quality of the image, the color, some other parameters that you have saved also in this preset. And with the S1, and I made a video, you can try to find it on my YouTube channel. When I press the joystick to the left direction, it will open the menu where I select the minimum shutter speed if I am on the auto ISO mode. With the Leica Sl2, you cannot do that. You need to go into the menu of the ISO settings and change it manually. So that means that you need to go. First, you are in auto ISO, so it's okay. You select it very easily, auto or not auto. but if you are in an auto and you want to quickly change the minimum shutter speed, you need to go into the auto ISO submenu. So it takes time. It's not just one finger press and change the speed and take the picture, still keeping the eye into the viewfinder. You cannot do that. You cannot do that with the SL2. You need to go in the submenu. When you are using manual lenses on the SL2, if it is an M lenses or an R lenses, it works perfectly because when you are using the correct lens adapter, the one from Leica with the feature that reads the 6-bit coded on the M lens, the Leica SL2 recognizes the lens because it is in its database, and you will have into the EXIF information the name of the lens and so on. And moreover, it will, if the IBIS is selected, it will apply the correct IBIS linked to the focal length. So that's very powerful if you are using M or R lenses. But as soon as you use something else, there are two drawbacks. First, you cannot select the focal length. Okay, you don't have a menu in which you have to select the focal length. With the Lumix, as soon as you switch it on, and that there is a manual lens on it, it will ask you to precise the focal length that you have mounted on your body. So for instance, if I mount my Nikon 28mm on the Lumix S1 with a Metabones adapter, when I switch on the camera, I have a menu here that asks me if it is a 50mm, the former manual lenses that I had, or if I want to change. If I just press the shutter speed, I validate that it is a 50, or I can change. I say yes, and I go here and I say it's a 28mm, and I manually do it because it recognizes nothing. On the Lumix, it works. You can select the focal length, whatever the lens you put on it. So you can take a 400, a 600mm from Nikon or whatever manual lenses that are very powerful. You can mount on it, and when you switch the camera on, it asks you what is the focal length. And then if the IBIS is on, it will apply the correct IBIS depending on the focal length. With the SL2, when you mount something else that is not M or R lenses, you cannot tell him that it is a 28mm. You cannot. You have to cheat it, because if you don't precise the focal length, the IBIS is not possible to work. I mean, the IBIS is off. It's like if you had a Leica SL601, the first one. So when you switch it on, it doesn't know that it is a 28. Then you need to go into the submenu and ask into the lens profile. If it is on auto, as it doesn't recognize any M or R lens, it will not tell you what it is. If it is on, you see you have only M or R submenu, so you cannot come and select a focal length. So what do you do then? You have to cheat it and go into the M and select a 28mm into the M submenu, or into the R and select a 28mm if there is a 28. Yes, I have an R28 f2.8. So now I have selected it's R28mm, and I can now switch the image stabilization. I can switch it to on or off if I want. And where is it? IBIS here, march on, stop on, off on. So that's a real drawback when you are using manual lenses that are not M or R. If you want the image stabilization, you need to cheat it and tell him it's a R or a M lens. But if it sees a 600 millimeter, I don't think it exists in the R system that you can find a 600 millimeter. So this is a real drawback, according to me, when it is about taking pictures with manual lenses out of the M or R range. Unfortunately, another one. In the SL2, you cannot specify the display frequency, refresh frequency of the display, neither in the viewfinder nor into the back display. That means that depending on the environmental light that you have around you, you will have flickering into your viewfinder or on the back display. You cannot switch to 60, 120 Hertz. It's a limitation. That's it. You cannot change it. Another limitation. When you are making a precise focus, you can ask to have a zoom in to help you make your focus with the peaking activated or not. Following the previous limitation that I said, you have to select the display mode in which you have the peaking that is activated. And then when you zoom into the image, when you are using a manual lens, for instance, it will zoom at the place where you have the focus, and the zoom will take all the screen. So in some cases, that means it can be annoying because you lose your framing, your composition. You don't know where you are. You zoom into this precise point, and then when it is full screen, finally you don't know if you move a little, you don't know if you are changing your composition and so on. With the Lumix, you can select either it zooms on the full screen or in a small part of it. That means that you keep an eye on the composition with the full screen, and at the place you zoom, you have a small window that shows you a local zoom of the point of focus that you are tuning and making your focus very precisely. This is very helpful because you don't lose your composition. You make the focus, but you still see what's around, and you are sure that you are not changing too much the composition. That's very powerful again on the Lumix. Small one. When the camera is off on the Lumix, you can see the status of the battery. So you can easily look at the top of the camera, even if it's off. You see how much battery it remains in the body. Whereas the SL2, when it is off, nothing is displayed on the top of the screen. So you have to switch it on to check your battery level. Small point. The custom profiles on the Lumix SL2, Lumix SL2, no, it doesn't exist. On the Leica SL2, you can have 6 custom profiles, and the way you name that is, to my point of view, too short. You cannot give a precise description of this profile in which you can tell about if it is aperture priority or speed priority, if it is ISO auto or not, what is max ISO, what is minimum shutter speed. In the Lumix, you have a long chain of character, so you can give as much information as you can, but it helps you to understand what is the profile, in fact. And it's also very helpful when you are describing the video profiles that you can pre-save on the Lumix. You can write a lot of things, information in the name. And I think that on the SL2, the name is too short. You cannot precise a lot of things. You have to give a name like sport, street, portrait, but you don't know precisely what's behind. And well, to me, it's missing some more characters to describe the name of the profile. If you are an AF on user, I mean, you know, this back button to make the focus and only the shutter release to take the picture, you don't have AF on button on the SL2. You don't. The only way to do that is to apply the AF on function to the joystick. And that's it. So that means that you need to be in manual mode to use the joystick to make the focus and release the shutter. That means that in the Lumix, you switch from single to continuous to manual here, okay? If you are single and continuous, then you apply the function of focusing only to the AF on button, not to the shutter release. That means that if you are in single, you press AF on, it makes the focus once. It doesn't change it only if you release the button and press it again, you will make a new focus. But you press the focus and you take the picture. If you are in continuous mode, if you keep your finger on the AF on button, it will continue to focus until you take the picture. And if you are in manual mode, of course, the good thing about this Lumix is that even on manual mode, if you press AF on, it will make an autofocus. You force it to focus automatically, even if you are in manual mode, and then you take your picture. With the Leica Sl2, you need to be on manual mode to use the back AF on button, because you cannot tell the camera that if you are on AF continuous or AF single, the shutter release doesn't focus. You cannot ask him to do that. That means that you are obliged to be in manual focus to make this shutter release not focusing, and then you use the back button to focus. That means that if you are in single, it will focus single. If you are in continuous, it will continuously focus using this button. Well, it works, but you need to be in manual mode and you need to think about it, and that means that this button pressing here is applied to AF on and not something else, as you are missing a lot of button at the back of the camera. You don't have a dedicated AF on button, but this is what I meant. In fact, you don't have a dedicated button, so you need to apply this function to the joystick, and doing so you cannot apply something else to the joystick, and you are obliged to be in manual focus on the camera to do so. Looking to the display, you have information on the top and bottom of the display telling you the speed, the ISO, the kind of light measuring, and so on. All these informations are on top of your image, on top of your composition, because the image that you see on the back screen is taking all the screen, and the display information on top and bottom are on the image, so it can hide sometimes important things of your composition. So that means that you need to hide, pressing the FN menu to change the display mode. So you hide these informations to clearly see your composition. And doing so, you are missing this information because you don't see them any longer. With the Lumix, you can tell him if the information are on top of the image, or if the image is smaller, to be not hidden by the information. So that means that in the Lumix, you will have the information smaller on the screen with the information on top and on the bottom, but do not hide the image. So you are sure you are doing your composition correctly without nothing that hides something in your frame, and you still have access to this information that you lose with the Sl2. As soon as you hide the information to get access to the full view of your image, you lose the information. That's it. When I speak about information, this is what I mean. All these white information on top and bottom of the display. This is what will hide your picture. When you are on auto ISO mode, you can select your minimum shutter speed within a range. On the Lumix, the minimum shutter speed can be selected among the full range of available shutter speed of the camera. With the SL2, when you are on auto ISO mode, the minimum shutter speed is between 1/2 of a second and 1/2000 of a second. It cannot be 4,000 of a second, or it can be lower than 1/2 of a second. Don't know why, but the range is limited. I'm not sure it's a bad or whatever point, but just to let you know the limitation of the range. User profile helps you save all the settings of the camera, ISO, speed, and so on. And you could think that as the aperture of the lens are electronical, if you save your profile when you are at f8, for instance, you could think that next time you open this profile, you are at f8. There could be a limitation. For instance, if you save the profile with a very wide aperture f1.4 lens, if you save the profile with a lens 1.4 and then you take another lens that is f2 or f4, obviously when you switch back to this profile, it cannot be 1.4 because the lens doesn't have 1.4 aperture, and it could switch directly to the maximum aperture of the lens. Okay. But here, I save the profile to be f8. For instance, I have a profile that is called street photography, and I want to have f8, ISO, high ISO, and the speed to 1/250 minimum shutter speed. But each time I come back to the profile, it is not at f8. It is just at the f it was before I switched to this profile. Completely stupid. I mean, what's the purpose to save profile if it doesn't save the parameter, the important parameter when you save them? What's the purpose of it? And by the way, it works with the Lumix. If you save a profile with the aperture set to 8, as soon as you load this profile, the aperture will be set to f8, even if you start from f2 when you open a switch on the camera. So yes, it works with the Lumix, and when you save the profiles, it saves also the aperture that is selected, not the Leica Sl2. So that's it for today regarding the Sl2 compared to the S1R. As a disclaimer, obviously I'm not sponsored by Leica R, and I'm not sponsored by Lumix neither. All the gear that I show you are cameras and lenses that I have bought myself, and I bought the Sl2 on second hand at a real good price, and I wanted to know and have an objective point of view of this camera compared to the S1R. That's why I bought it, and I will sell it without losing money. That's the purpose of the second-hand market. You don't lose money. So that's it. To my point of view, the Sl2, to make it short, is a very nice camera. It's a wonderful camera, and I'm not even sure I will sell it because it's a joy to play with it. Depending on what you do, it's very, very interesting, simple. You don't have access to a lot of features, but it works. In the contrary, the Lumix S1R here are much more efficient and powerful, and you have all the features that you need under your fingers: spot metering, minimum shutter speed, depth of field preview, lots of other things that I have discussed in this video and described as clearly as possible. I hope that this video will help you take your decision and know more about the SL2. It wasn't meant to be just a wow, the SL2 is the best ever camera, blah, blah, blah. No, it was oriented to show you what is the interface of the Leica Sl2. You don't have a lot of patterns. That's a price to pay to have a very nice design camera. It's wonderful, but you have a lot of limitation according to me. And some of them are more important than others. I think there are a lot that, okay, you can deal without, and it's not that feature that will help you make better photography. And whatever the picture, it's not the feature that makes you a good photographer and make you make good photography. It's you, the photographer. But when you have a camera that is very efficiently designed in terms of ergonomy, button interface, button layout, and so on, it will just make the process faster and easier for you. That's all. It will not make a better photography. Regarding the image quality, I don't want to make the video talking about this in the same video. Honestly, it's just a matter of color rendering of the two cameras that are different. They manage the color differently, I have to admit. But honestly, I don't prefer one over the other. And as soon as you make a good preset of your camera in your Lightroom using this color chart that helps you to define a good color profile, then you don't really care about the color management of the camera if you are shooting in RAW compared to, of course, if you are in JPEG, the results are very different in two cameras. By the way, regarding the RAW, the Leica is using DNG files. That means that in your Lightroom, if you are like me using a fixed license of Lightroom, which is the license Lightroom 6, and not the one that you rent every month, the DNG is opened and recognized by Lightroom. With the Lumix and the RAW files of the Lumix, you need to go through a DNG converter before you open it into Lightroom 6 because it's not up to date and it doesn't recognize the file format of the Lumix S1 or S1R. So that's it. Maybe I missed other things, but yes, you know that I love the Lumix S1. I made a video and you can go and check this video to see all my button preset that makes this camera very powerful when you are in a shooting session. And obviously, if you are just living on vacation or wanting to be more simple, the Leica Sl2 is like a Leica M or a Leica Q. Its simplified interface makes the shooting session not a professional one, but makes this photographic session very pleasing. I mean, I don't say it's a bad camera. I just wanted to show you the limitation that I found in this Sl2. I hope it was helpful for you, and I wish you a good time. I hope you're doing well, and tell me what you think, and if you have decided to buy or not a Sl2 or Lumix or whatever, don't hesitate to comment. I will appreciate. Goodbye.